You walked into that meeting before anyone spoke, before the agenda hit the screen, before the pleasantries. You felt it. Something was wrong. The air was different. The room was different. Your body was different. Your shoulders tightened. Your breath got shallow. Your brain started scanning, not consciously. You did not decide to scan. Your nervous system did it for you. And here is what nobody tells you about that moment. You didn't feel your boss's stress because you're sensitive. You felt it because your brain was designed to. The nervous system you were born with has one job above all others: detect threat. And a dysregulated human in a position of power, that is one of the most ancient threats your brain knows. Welcome to AI Cafe Conversations podcast. I'm Sahar Andrade, Neuroleadership coach, Forbes Coach Council member, and the person who has spent the last 2 decades studying what actually happens inside leaders in their teams when pressure hits. Today we're talking about something that most leadership conversations completely miss. We talk about what leaders do. We talk about strategy, decisions, communication. We almost never talk about what leaders transmit. Because here is the truth that neuroscience has now confirmed with data. Your boss's stressed nervous system is rewiring the biology of your team. And in 2026, with AI pressure hitting organizations for every direction, this is the leadership conversation we can no longer afford to skip. So let's go. Let me start with the biology, the science of nervous system transmission. Your nervous system does not operate in isolation. It never has. Humans are wired for co-regulation. That is not a soft concept. That is Polyvagal theory, pioneered by Dr. Stephen Porges, and it's one of the most important findings in neuroscience for anyone who leads other humans. Here is the plain language version of that. Your nervous system is constantly and consistently reading the nervous system around you, especially the nervous systems of people who have power over you. Your brain is a social organ. It evolved in groups. It survived because it could read the room faster than conscious thought. When your boss walks in regulated, your nervous system gets a signal. Safe. You can think, you can contribute, you can take risks. When your boss walks in dysregulated, your amygdala, or the threat center, fires before they can open their mouth. The amygdala is your brain's threat detection center. It processes sensory input about 200 milliseconds faster than your prefrontal cortex, that is the rational, strategic, creative part of your brain. By the time you consciously register that your boss seems off, your body has already shifted into protective mode. This is not intuition. This is not empathy. This is wiring. And here is where it gets measurable. Research on polyvagal co-regulation has shown something remarkable. Leaders who regulate their own nervous system produce measurable physiological changes in their teams. We're talking about a 31% reduction of cortisol levels, or the stress hormone, in teams led by regulated leaders. 31%. And like I said, cortisol is your primary stress hormone. It does not lie. That is not about mood. That is not about vibes. This is the actual chemical composition of your team's biology. Now, layer in mirror neurons. The mirror neurons are the cells in your brain that activate when you observe someone else's action or emotions. They are why we flinch when we watch someone stub their toe. They are why you yawn when someone else's yawns. We all went through that, didn't we? And they are why, when your boss is in survival mode, your team's nervous system mirrors that survival mode automatically. Not because your team is weak, not because they are overly emotional, because they're human, and human nervous systems are built to synchronize. One dysregulated leader, one team in threat mode, all day, every day. Now, here is where 2026 adds a layer that simply did not exist at this intensity before. The executives I work with are not dysregulated because they are bad leaders. They are dysregulated because they are operating under a level of ambiguity and pressure that the human nervous system was not designed to sustain indefinitely. Think about the average executive, what they are holding right now. Deloitte's 2026 Global Human Capital Trends found that 60% of executives are using AI in their decision making, but only 5% say they manage it well. 5%, which means the other 95% are making high stakes decisions with a tool they don't fully trust in an environment that changes every week under board pressure to show results. 82% of CEOs in that same research cycle report exhaustion that does not respond to standard recovery, not to vacation, not to a weekend, because the nervous system is not depleted by effort alone. It's depleted by chronic, unresolvable uncertainty. And chronic uncertainty is exactly what AI pressure creates. Every week there is a new tool. I call that whiplash. A new mandate, a new headline about which jobs are disappearing, a new board conversation about competitive advantage. The nervous system reads all of it as unresolved threat. And unresolved threat keeps cortisol elevated. Chronic elevated cortisol literally reduces the volume of your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain you need for strategy, judgment, empathy, and regulation. And then those executives walk into their team meetings and the nervous system transmit. This is not metaphor. This is biology. What's the cost of that? Let me show you what the transmission actually does to a team. I want you to think about the Google Project Aristotle. If you don't know what it is, please Google it. Google Project Aristotle. This was one of the most comprehensive workplace research studies ever conducted. Google spent years studying hundreds of teams trying to understand what made the difference between a high-performing team and an average one. The answer surprised a lot of people. It was not the credentials of the team members. It was not the strategy. It was not even the manager's expertise. It was psychological safety. Google defined psychological safety as a shared belief that the team is safe to interpersonal risk-taking, that you can speak up, that you can ask a question, that you can flag a problem without being penalized, without being looked at as the person that wants to rock the boat, as a person that doesn't know what they're doing, as an ignorant person, or as a person that doesn't know what they're doing. The research showed that psychological safety increases team learning behavior by 35%, and team performance 27%. And here is what most people don't talk about when they cite that research. Psychological safety is not a structural achievement. It's not built through a workshop or a policy or some glitzy work on a website. It lives in the nervous system of every person in the room. And it collapses the moment the person with the most power in the room goes into their own threat mode. Because when the boss is dysregulated, the team brain reads one message: it is not safe here right now. And the nervous system is not wrong to read it that way. Power protects in groups. A dysregulated leader means the environment is unstable. And an unstable environment means threat. The rational brain does not get to override that signal. What does a team in threat mode actually look like? It does not look like panic, but it looks quiet. People stop raising concerns because the nervous system has learned that raising a concern adds to the tension. It does not help. It might make things worse. People stop asking honest questions because questions invite scrutiny. And scrutiny in a threat environment does not feel safe. People start telling the boss what the boss wants to hear, not because they are dishonest, because the fawn response, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. One of the nervous system 4 primary protective states sounds like agreement. And then something happens that is catastrophic for any organization running an AI integration. Decisions get made in an information vacuum. The leader is in threat mode. The team is in protective mode. The data that should be flowing up, the problems, the resistance, the real feedback from the people closest to the work stops moving. And the leader makes decisions based on what they can see from where they stand, which is not what is actually happening. I want to give you a number that should concern every executive in an AI transformation right now. 85% of AI adoption initiatives fail to scale past the pilot stage. 95%. And the research from MIT Sloan points to the primary barrier being not technology, but human nervous system resistance to uncertainty. When your team is in a threat mode, they're not going to champion the new AI tool. They're going to wait. They're going to see who gets punished for getting it wrong before they try it themselves. They are going to report progress they have not made because the environment has taught them that honesty is risky. Your AI mandate is not failing because of the technology. It's failing because of the nervous system temperature in the room. There is a stat I use in workshops that stops rooms cold. A single 20-minute activation of the threat response can impair cognitive flexibility for up to 3 hours. 20 minutes, 3 hours. If your team is in low-grade threat mode for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, because the person in front of the room is running on cortisol, do the math on what that costs your organization. Not in morale, in actual cognitive output. And now add the human cost, not the productivity cost, the human one. The DDI Global Leadership Forecast for 2026 found that 66% of managers and 71% of C-suite leaders said they would leave their current role for one that offered better support for their well-being. Not the money, not authority, well-being. For a nervous system that could recover. The people who leave first are the ones with the most options, the ones who contribute most, the ones who you cannot afford to lose. All of that starts with one leader's nervous system transmitting in the wrong direction, in the wrong channel, in the wrong frequency. So what do regulated leaders actually do differently? I want you to think about two instruments. A thermometer. So a thermometer reads the temperature in the room. It reacts, it reflects. If the room is cold, the thermometer shows cold. If the room is hot, the thermometer shows hot. The thermometer is accurate, but it has no influence. Versus a thermostat. A thermostat sets the temperature in the room. It does not react to what the room is. It holds the temperature it has been set to. When the room gets cold, the thermostat activates. When the room gets too hot, the thermostat adjusts. The thermostat doesn't panic, it regulates. Leaders are a thermostat, not a thermometer. This is one of the core principles of my work, and I see it violated constantly in organizations under AI pressure, because pressure turns thermostat leaders into thermometer leaders. It pulls them from regulation into reaction. The leader who got dysregulated by the board meeting takes that energy into the team meeting. The team reacts because the team reads it. The leader reads the reaction. The cycle tightens, and the whole system ends up at a temperature nobody ever wanted. The regulated leader breaks that cycle, not by pretending everything is fine, not by bypassing the pressure, but by processing it before it transmits. Here is what neuroscience shows about how that actually works. The prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for judgment, empathy, decision-making, and emotional regulation, communicates with the amygdala bidirectionally. The amygdala sends threat signals up. The prefrontal cortex can send calming signals down, but only if it's online. When you are in chronic stress, when cortisol is elevated, when you have not slept properly, when you are holding too much with too few resources, the prefrontal cortex goes partially offline. The top-down regulation that should quiet the amygdala weakens, and the threat response runs the show. Regulation is not a mindset, it's a biological state. You can't think your way into regulation. You have to create the physiological conditions for it. That's what my brain framework addresses. I'm not going to talk you through all 5 principles today because the full mythology is reserved for the people I work with directly. But what I want you to understand is this. Regulation is not luxury for leaders. It's the prerequisite for everything else. Strategy requires a regulated prefrontal cortex. Empathy requires a regulated nervous system. Psychological safety requires a regulated leader. You cannot build a safe team from an unsafe nervous system. And in AI accelerated environment, where the pressure on leaders is not going down anytime soon, the leaders who regulate first will be the ones whose teams perform consistently. Not just perform, adapt, and adopt new tools. Speak honestly. Bring the problems up before they become crisis. Because here is what the data shows us about co-regulation running in the positive direction. When the leader is regulated, the team nervous system shifts, not immediately, not magically, but measurably. That 31% cortisol reduction happens when the nervous system of the leader is transmitting something different. Safety, steadiness, capacity. The team reads it. The team's biology responds. The prefrontal cortex stays online. The honest conversations happen. The problems surface before they become disasters. The psychological safety holds. The AI tools get used because the environment is not threatening enough to trigger resistance. One regulated leader, 31% lower cortisol, 35% higher team learning, 27% better performance. All of it transmitted biology to biology. So the question is not whether your nervous system is transmitting, it always is. The question is, what is it transmitting? Are you the thermometer reading the room's pressure, or are you the thermostat holding the temperature steady? That's the choice at the center of leadership in 2026. And it starts with regulation. If you're listening to this and something just shifted, good. That means your nervous system is already paying attention to the right thing. Here is what I want you to take into this week. Notice the room when you walk in, not just the agenda. Notice what the bodies in the rooms are doing. Notice what your body is doing before you speak. Because the most important broadcast you send as a leader is not the words you say. It's the nervous system state you carry into the room. If you want to understand where your nervous system is right now, I have an assessment. I have the link down in the notes. It takes about 10 minutes. It will show you exactly where you are operating and what your nervous system is signaling to your team. And if you want to go deeper, if you want to build the regulation that makes you a thermostat and not a thermometer, let's talk. The link to book a leadership clarity call is in the show notes. 30 minutes, no pitch, just clarity about where you are and what is possible. Thank you for being here. Show me some love, like I always say. Share this episode with a leader who needs to hear it. Not because they're struggling, but because they care. And caring leaders deserve this information. Subscribe to our podcast. Leave us a comment. Rate our podcast because that really helps us a lot for more people to listen to what we're talking about. Thank you for making us between the top 2% of podcasts globally. I really appreciate your help and your support. Again, show me some love. Till I see you on Friday for the Friday Forbes article light short episode of our AI Cafe Conversations podcast. Peace out.
1,